She said my name like it was a secret. Soft, low, almost amused. The kind of tone that lingers in your head after the words are gone. Come in, Adam. Dinner's getting cold. I'd only meant to return the casserole dish. That's what I kept telling myself as I stepped into her apartment. A small, warm place that smelled faintly of rosemary and something sweet burning just a little. She stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, hair loose in that effortless way that never looks planned. There was something steady about her. The way she moved, the quiet certainty in her gestures. But underneath it, I caught something else. A hesitation, maybe, or the echo of it. Hope you're hungry, she said, smiling without quite meeting my eyes. I was, but not for food. The table was set for two. Too deliberate to be casual, too simple to be pretentious. A candle half melted. 2 glasses already half full. She gestured for me to sit, and when I did, the chair creaked louder than it should have, the kind of sound that makes you aware of every movement after. We talked at first about safe things. The noise from the building's plumbing. The weather that refused to stay consistent. How the neighborhood cat had started sleeping on her balcony. She laughed softly when I mentioned how it also sat by my window some nights. Said maybe it just liked company. Her voice had a warmth that filled spaces silence couldn't. Then she leaned forward to pass me a bowl, and her fingers brushed mine. Not by accident, not exactly. Just long enough for both of us to notice. I pretended not to. She didn't pull away. The food was simple, home-cooked. Too good for how ordinary it looked. She watched me take the first bite, almost shyly, then relaxed when I said it was amazing. It's nothing special, she murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes dropping to the plate. But it was. Everything about it. The taste, the silence between us, the way her laughter came slower now. It all felt like a moment balancing on the edge of something we hadn't named. After a while, she picked up a spoon, scooped up a small bite of stew, and held it out toward me. You have to try this part, she said, quiet but steady. I froze for half a second. It was the kind of gesture you'd expect from someone closer, a partner, maybe, but she didn't seem embarrassed. Just calm, watching me, waiting. I leaned forward. The metal of the spoon was warm from her touch. When I met her eyes again, she was smiling. Faintly, like she knew exactly what she'd done but wasn't going to explain it. Something in the air shifted then. The candle flickered. A car passed outside, and still we didn't move. She finally looked away first. You should eat before it gets cold, she said, clearing her throat. Her voice was steady again, but her hands weren't. She reached for her glass and almost knocked it over. I caught it before it spilled. My hand covered hers for just a moment. Just long enough to feel the tremor under her skin. Neither of us said anything. The knock at the door broke it. Sharp, sudden, out of place. She blinked, looked toward it, then back at me. That quiet, unreadable expression returning. Don't move, she whispered, and for some reason I didn't. The knock came again, softer this time, then nothing. She opened the door halfway, spoke quietly to someone in the hallway, then closed it again with a faint sigh. When she turned back, her eyes found mine as if checking whether I'd seen something I shouldn't. It was just the delivery guy, she said, brushing her hands on a towel. I forgot I ordered wine earlier. Her voice was lighter now, but her shoulders were tight. She poured herself a glass, then hesitated before offering me one. I'm fine, I said. She smiled. You're too polite, Adam. That'll get you hurt someday. The words hung there, half a joke, half a warning. She sat across from me again, slower this time. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but it wasn't easy either. It felt like we were both listening for something we couldn't name. I noticed a photo on the sideboard behind her, her with a man, older, smiling. There was a distance in her eyes even in the picture. I didn't ask. She caught me looking anyway. That was my husband, she said quietly. We're not together anymore. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. He lives in Chicago now, I think. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. She gave a small shrug, as if shaking off the weight of it. People grow apart, she added. sometimes without meaning to. There was no bitterness in her tone, just a kind of calm that felt practiced. She changed the subject then, asked about my classes, my plans after graduation. I told her I didn't really know yet, that I was still trying to figure out who I was when no one was telling me what to do. Then don't rush, she said softly. You have time. Something about the way she said it, almost wistful, made me look up. Her eyes met mine, steady and unguarded for once. That was the moment I noticed how close we were sitting, how the candlelight caught the faint lines near her mouth when she smiled, how her perfume, something warm, woody, lingered just enough to make my heart beat uneven. I shifted back slightly, but she didn't. Her hand moved to pour more wine, and when she set the bottle down, her fingers brushed my wrist. Light, unplanned, yet deliberate all the same. Neither of us spoke. The sound of her breath filled the space between us, shallow, uncertain. Then she laughed softly, as if to break the spell. You make me forget how old I am sometimes. I didn't laugh. You don't seem old. She looked at me, really looked, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might reach for me. Instead, she exhaled, leaned back in her chair, and stared at the candle. I should probably turn in soon, she murmured, though she didn't move. I nodded, but neither of us stood. The moment stretched, long enough for her hand to rest briefly on my shoulder as she passed behind me. Just long enough for her thumb to press, then hesitate before letting go. By the time I turned, she was at the doorway to the hall. Good night, Adam, she said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes, they lingered. I told myself it would just be a quick stop, returning her casserole dish again. But when she opened the door that evening, hair slightly damp, sleeves rolled up, I forgot what I'd come to say. Twice in 1 week, she teased, stepping aside. People will start talking. She said it lightly, but the faint tremor in her voice gave her away. The apartment looked different this time, brighter, somehow. Music played softly from the corner, something old and slow. She was rearranging books on the coffee table. A half-folded blanket lay on the couch, still holding the shape of where she'd been sitting. Sorry, she said, brushing a curl from her cheek. I didn't expect company. I won't stay long. You said that last time. We both smiled, then stopped almost at the same moment. She offered me tea, then stood too close while pouring it. The scent of bergamot mixed with the faint trace of her lotion, the kind that stays on your skin longer than it should. Her arm brushed mine as she handed me the cup. Neither of us stepped back. For a few minutes we talked about nothing. Her new job contract, the noise from the upstairs neighbors. I nodded at all the right moments, but my thoughts were nowhere near the words. Every time she looked up, I forgot what she just said. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it and froze. Her ex-husband's name flashed across the screen. She didn't answer, just stared for a moment, then turned it face down. Sorry, she murmured. He calls when he remembers something he thinks I still care about. Her voice was flat, but her hands weren't steady. The tea sloshed slightly in her cup. Without thinking, I reached out and covered her hand. You don't have to explain. She looked at me, long enough for the silence to feel heavy. You shouldn't be this kind, she whispered. It'll confuse things. I didn't ask what things she meant. She didn't pull her hand away. The music played on, soft and slow. We stood there, side by side, close enough that I could hear her breathing change. She turned toward me, barely, just enough for her shoulder to graze mine. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. The air felt thick, like the moment before rain. I thought she might step back. She didn't. Then the sound of keys rattling outside the door. Someone walking past, too close. We both froze. She exhaled, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. See? Even the walls would gossip about us. The tension broke, but not completely. I set my cup down, too quickly, and it clinked against the saucer. She reached out, steadied it with her hand, and for one suspended second, her fingers stayed on mine. No one moved. Adam, she said quietly. My name again, soft, unsure. Then she stepped back, forcing a small smile. You should go before it gets late. But her eyes, they didn't match her words. It rained that night, the kind of steady, curtain-like rain that blurs everything outside the windows. I almost turned around twice before knocking, but the lights were on in her apartment, and something in me needed to see her. She opened the door barefoot, hair pulled back, sweater sleeves rolled over her hands. You'll catch a cold, she said before I even spoke. Then, softer, come in. The smell of chamomile tea and wet air mixed inside the room. She handed me a towel without meeting my eyes. Rough day? She asked. I nodded. Just couldn't stay in my room tonight. She hesitated, then motioned toward the couch. Sit. I was just... She gestured at the half-read book on the table. Pretending to focus. I sat. The rain filled the silence. After a while, she said, You remind me of when I first moved here. Everything felt open then. Possible. Her voice had that quiet ache again, the one she tried to hide behind casual words. Do you miss it? I asked. She smiled faintly. Missing things is easy. It's stopping that's hard. Her fingers toyed with the edge of the book. Then she looked at me, really looked, and something changed in her face, as if she'd finally stopped pretending. I shouldn't, she started, then shook her head. You're young, Adam. You'll leave this place, meet someone. I'm here now, I said. The words came out before I could measure them. She froze. Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time, she didn't hide the tremor in her breath. You don't know what you're doing, she whispered. Maybe I do. A long silence followed, only the rain moving between us. She reached out then, almost absently, brushing a damp strand of hair from my forehead. Her hand lingered longer than it should have. You shouldn't make it harder, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not the only one making it hard, I said. Her hand dropped, but her eyes didn't leave mine. I've tried to ignore this, she murmured. But every time you're here, it feels like I'm waiting for something I shouldn't be waiting for. Her words landed heavy between us. Not loud, but final in a way that made my chest tighten. The space shrank. She leaned back against the couch, and I followed without thinking, the air warm from the closeness. Her shoulder brushed mine. She didn't move. Outside, thunder rolled once, far away. She turned her head toward me, inches apart now, the kind of distance that isn't real anymore. Adam, she said quietly, almost pleading. Don't. But she didn't finish. The lights flickered once. We both drew in a breath, caught in the same one. And just before either of us moved, the doorbell rang. The doorbell kept ringing, sharp, insistent. She stood frozen for a second, then stepped away quickly, like waking from a dream. Stay here, she whispered. I listened as she opened the door, her voice hushed, too low to catch. Then another voice, familiar, younger, impatient. Mom, I told you I'd come by tonight. Why didn't you answer my messages? I stopped breathing. She hadn't mentioned a daughter. There was movement. A coat tossed over a chair, hurried footsteps, the tone of an argument she was trying to keep light. I could hear her say, I wasn't expecting anyone. Her daughter walked into view a moment later. Early 20s, sharp-eyed, the kind of presence that fills a room fast. She stopped when she saw me. Oh, she said. Didn't know you had company. I stood, awkwardly. I'm just a neighbor, I managed. She was kind enough to let me dry off. Her mother smiled too quickly. Adam helps with the plants sometimes. The daughter raised an eyebrow. Right? The silence that followed was unbearable. She glanced between us, reading more than either of us wanted her to. Then she said, Well, don't let me interrupt, and went to the kitchen. Her mother avoided my eyes as she followed her. I caught a few fragments. You can't just show up, he's just being polite, don't start. When her daughter left 20 minutes later, the air in the apartment felt thinner, colder. She closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a long, shaking breath. I wasn't hiding her, she said quietly. I just didn't want you to see me as someone's mother. I didn't know what to say. She's 22, she added, her voice fraying at the edges. Barely older than you. The room went still. I stepped closer. That doesn't change anything. Her laugh was soft but tired. It changes everything, Adam. She moved past me, brushing my arm, the touch light but charged. You think this is just about us. It's not. I turned to face her. Then tell me what it is. She stopped back to me. Her shoulders rose with a slow breath. It's me trying not to ruin something good again. She turned then, eyes shining, not from tears but from some fierce, quiet exhaustion. You make me forget what I've already lost. We stood in that confession, no noise but the rain still falling outside. I took a step closer. Her hand lifted, barely touching my chest, then hesitated. Don't make me choose this, she whispered. But she didn't step away either. The space between us pulsed with everything we hadn't said. Outside, the storm eased, but neither of us moved. She finally broke the silence. Maybe this is the part where we stop pretending. The next day, I told myself I wouldn't go back. And then evening came, and her light was on again. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Neither of us spoke. The air between us felt different, heavier, like the space already remembered everything we hadn't done. I thought you might stop coming, she said. I tried. Her eyes softened at that. Me too. For a long moment we just stood there. The sound of her clock ticked behind us, steady and too loud. Do you want me to go? I asked. She looked away. That's not the question I'm afraid of. She stepped back, letting me in. The door shut behind me with a soft click that sounded like a decision. The room was half-lit, a warm pool of light spilling from the lamp by the couch. She crossed her arms, not to block me, but to hold herself together. I keep thinking, she said, about how this looks, what people would say. I don't care what they'd say. She gave a quiet laugh. That's because they wouldn't talk about you. I took a step closer. Then who would they talk about? Her eyes met mine. Me. Silence again. The kind that hums. She reached out then, hesitant, trembling, but rested her fingers against my sleeve. Not my hand, not my chest. Just that light, cautious touch, like she was testing if I was real. I told myself I'd stop this before it mattered, she whispered. Too late, I said. Her hand slid down, barely brushing my wrist. The smallest movement, but it felt like the whole world shifted with it. You shouldn't say that, she murmured. I mean it. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. Then promise me you'll remember me like this, before we ruin it. The lamp flickered. Neither of us moved. I reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. My thumb grazed her cheek. She closed her eyes, just once, like she wanted to memorize the touch. When she opened them again, something had changed. Resolve, sadness, maybe both. Adam, she said quietly, we can't. But you want to. She swallowed hard. That's the problem. Our foreheads almost touched now, close enough that I could feel her breath tremble against my lips. For one suspended second, the whole room held its breath with us. And then she stepped back. Not far, but enough. Enough to mean it. I needed to know, she said, voice barely steady. And now I do. I nodded, though I couldn't trust my voice. She gave a small, broken smile. So do you. Outside, the rain started again. Soft this time, almost kind. We stood there, two people who had already crossed a line without ever touching. Days passed without a word between us. No texts, no accidental encounters in the hallway. Just the steady hum of distance trying to rewrite what had already happened. Then one morning, a small envelope appeared on my doorstep. My name written in her handwriting, the kind that leans slightly right, always certain, always hers. Inside, coffee. Just coffee. M. I found her at the cafe 2 blocks down, sitting by the window where the light fell soft across her face. She looked different. Not distant, just quieter inside herself. You came, she said. I wasn't sure I should. I wasn't sure you would. We smiled, and that was enough to break the invisible wall that had been holding us apart. We talked, not about that night, not about what almost happened, but about ordinary things. The kind of talk people use when they're learning how to breathe again. Still, every glance carried the weight of what we weren't saying. At one point, she reached for the sugar and her fingers brushed mine. Neither of us pulled away. "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" I asked. She took a slow breath. "No," she said, "because then we wouldn't know who we are now." Her eyes softened. "You reminded me I could still feel something real. I'd forgotten what that was like." I didn't answer. I just watched the way her fingers circled her mug. Calm. Steady. "Sure." She looked up again. "What about you?" I smiled faintly. "You made me stop rushing. You made me notice the quiet." For a while, we sat like that. Two people who had stepped back from a ledge and were somehow grateful they had. When it was time to leave, she stood, hesitated, then opened her arms. I stepped into them without thinking. It wasn't a desperate hug. It was slow, grounding. The kind that says I see you without needing to explain anything else. Her cheek rested near my temple. She whispered, "You'll do fine out there." I whispered back, "So will you." We stayed like that a moment longer. Her hands warm on my back, the sound of traffic outside mixing with the soft rhythm of our breathing. When we finally pulled apart, her smile held no sadness this time, just peace. As I walked away, I glanced back once. She was still there by the window, watching, the light spilling across her like a quiet promise. And for the first time, it didn't feel like an ending, just a truth we'd finally made peace with. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?